Thanks a lot, Carmen Beatriz. Warm welcome and greetings from Berlin. Maybe some words about my background. I started studying political science in Mainz a long time ago. Then I worked as a journalist before joining Konrad Adenauer Stiftung with the media programs. Political communication always was one of the assets, and campaigning in practice and in theory, it was always a topic interesting in the foundation, and we did a lot with international aspects, visiting campaign rallies in different countries, comparing the conventions in the United States with what we are doing in Germany. So you are easily learning that there is a lot of difference depending on a lot of structural aspects, but as well there are some similarities. So I will try to share different aspects with you in a very brief form, because I hope we have time to discuss and to dig a little bit deeper in what you are interested in. But maybe some of these flashpoints I will mention maybe share a light on what I think is important in election campaigns today. In first place, for every one of us, probably it's clear that campaigns do not stand alone. Campaigns are part of society, and about campaigns, speaking only about campaigns is not enough. You have to look at what's happening in the society and what are the structural aspects political parties and candidates are facing. Today, when you look, for example, in Germany, and you read the actual books, for example, from Andreas Reckwitz and other sociologists tackling the changes in our society in the last decades, you get an idea what he's speaking about. For example, this kind of polarization we see today in Germany, but we see in other countries as well. European elections were an example, and United States elections is as well. So this in Germany, from a German perspective, is quite new in a society which for quite a long time had quite a broad-based consensus about issues. It was after last century, the big issues were dealt with: European Union, NATO, economic system. Afterwards, it was in many campaigns a lot more about the how to do things and not about what to do. And this had its effects. Today, it changed a lot, and there are a lot of global aspects as well back. Now we have as well a new situation which is about trust. In a lot of countries, you see that over the time, images of political parties about candidates were not very high ranked. But today, in the society, there is a feeling that you may not trust anybody. Trust in media was reduced. Trust in political parties is even lower than before. And everything what we see about fake news, disinformation, is contributing to a situation where people say, oh, I'm not sure. The COVID campaigns, for example, deepened this distrust. What actually Russia is doing, what other actors on the field are doing about disinformation is as well contributing to this situation. In my view, for example, what Mr. Putin does is not gaining him trust, but it's destroying trust in everybody else. And this may be one of his ideas. Today as well, we have a global surrounding for the campaigns where bigger issues are back, which were not present in a lot of campaigns around the year. For example, the big question about peace and war. in Europe after Ukraine war. It started not in 22, but in 14. But after 22, it's an issue. And if you look to our election results and what people are feeling about, what's driving people in campaigns, for example, the success of parties like the new formation of Sarah Wagenknecht has a lot to do with this kind of peace and war and the feeling of the people. This makes it quite clear that it's not only facts as well, it's a lot of emotions. It's a lot about what people are feeling, what people are thinking, what is their perception about the reality. Sometimes it differs from reality, but as political parties, you have to do this always in mind. The big question for campaigners always had been, does political campaigns, does election campaigns matter? Does it make really a difference? For quite a long time in Germany, we had strong core voter basis for the political parties for decades. It was a big shift if between one election and the others there was for a party 5% up, 5% down. Now we have a situation where it's a lot more volatile and where as well until the last moment of a campaign, of a time, there can be differences. So I would say it depends a lot what is the basics for a lot of years, what is the structure of the mindset of the people, but obviously we see that campaigns matter. One of the examples more recently in Germany was the campaign in 21 with Olaf Scholz and the Social Democrats coming in first. They gained in very few weeks about 10 percentage points. It was that they had been for a long time in 15%, and then for the surprise of a lot of people, they came out with 25 in quite a short time. And one, obviously, from my viewpoint, working for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, it's quite clear that I very closely linked to Christian Democrats. For me, it was not so much a success of the Social Democrats campaign in this moment, but all the mistakes Christian Democrats did in the campaign, from the wrong candidate to all this what happened during the campaign. But it became quite clear that even in weeks there can be a difference of 10 or more percentage points. If you see Sarah Wagenknecht, in very few weeks, in very few months, it was a party which came from nowhere, and now they entered with two-digit results in 3 elections, and in 3 state elections they are now in the possibility even to be part of the government. So this makes clear what happened meanwhile. I would say as well, a lot changed, but a lot in the campaigns is staying quite the same. The basics are the same. The channels for the campaign is different. Which is clear since a long time, it's that strategy matters. When a lot of people are speaking about campaigns, you see always this nice campaign gimmicks, all these spots, all these nice ideas. Yesterday and the day before, Donald Trump serving at McDonald's and all this. But this is not always strategy. It's part of the strategy in the best case, but you need to know what do you want to communicate, what is your target group, what is your overall strategy, and not let you being driven by this kind of nice campaign ideas. If campaigners sit together in the headquarters, there is always fireworks of ideas, a lot of campaign posters, a lot of whatsoever of motives, but if it not pays on the overall strategy, it's probably worthless. And this is quite the same for a long time. First the message, then the channel. If you do not have an idea what to communicate, it's not important how you communicate. It will lead obviously to nothing. One of the campaigners we are very familiar with for a long time, Carmen Beatrice knows very well Klaus Schüler, who was one of the, or is one of the great strategists in Germany in election campaigns. He had driven all the campaigns of Angela Merkel over the time for CDU. Klaus Schüler always said that it's about strategy. It's a magic triangle, like Klaus said. It's a triangle: organization, hard work, strategy, and communication. These three aspects of a magic triangle have to work together, and there are a lot of issues which follow from this basics. For example, start early, finish late. You lose a lot of time after the election as before the election. You have to have permanent campaign in somehow, and not start in the very last moment. And now every party has a team which is working the last 72 hours for the campaign, because they know last moment, last minute swing is important for campaign. They know that election campaigns is a marathon and not a sprint. It's you need a long breeze for all this. And election day is always a saying from Klaus Schüler: election day is not Thanksgiving. People are not voting for you because you did things very well in the past. They want to know if you are able to deal with the future and with future issues, and with the ideas they have in the moment of the actual election. This is an error seen in a lot of campaigns, that, like generals in war, always fighting the last war once again. It's important to learn the lessons from what you did good and what failed, but every campaign is different, and you always need a new focus, you always need a new strategy, and it's not useful to do the same stuff which worked last time. Maybe this is not the case this time. You need to be relevant to the people. It's nice to speak about issues where your party had a stronghold, but if this stronghold and these competences are not in the main interest of the people, in this moment, it doesn't help you nothing. If the campaign is about economy, it's not important sometimes if you are on other marginal issues number one in the perception who is competent in this area. You need to be competent in the most important target for the voters in the moment of the new elections. You need to be authentic in the sense that it's the most one of the biggest errors you can make a campaign which doesn't fit the candidates you have. If you try to sell a candidate in a form he does not or she does not feel comfortable with, it won't work. If it's not authentic, people wouldn't buy it. Always in Germany for a long time, if you see a person like Helmut Kohl, it was not the most mediatic person. Even Angela Merkel always came over a little bit boring, but on the other hand, people saw her and him in this times as authentic, and saying this is a real person, this is the person which cares about the issue, this is the person I can trust. You have to be authentic, obviously, and you have to look competent on what you are saying. If people do not think that you are competent on this and not fit for leading a country, it's a problem as well. There is always in the campaigns a ground motive which stays quite the same if you look at the campaigns. It's normally fear against hope. One issue is if you are opposition and you try to gain majority, you will be differently focused on the campaign than a party who is in power for quite a long time. If you are governing since 25 years and then you speak about a new start, what you are doing, people would say, okay, why didn't you do it all the time you were governing? So in this case, the new people try to see the motive of fear, saying, oh, if the others are winning, it's a problem. we are more trusted, or it's about hope. With us, things will become better. If you look campaign posters all over the time, you can reduce a lot of campaigns to this two issues, fear against hope. And you have to calculate what is as well a long-term mindset of the voters. For example, Konrad Adenauer won the election of 1957, the only time in Germany when a political party gained more than 50% in an absolute majority. The slogan was "Keine Experimente," nada de experiments. This is still, if you look at some campaigns today, it's still an ongoing motive. People are conservative, in Germany at least. People are not very much liking rapid changes. For example, the slogan of Gerhard Schröder when he turned over Helmut Kohl, his slogan was not, it was everything mistake what Kohl did. He did very well in his time, but now it's time for a change. We will not do everything different, but a lot of things better. So this was the message for a conservative public, and in Germany, especially you as young people, you have to recognize that Germany is an elderly society. It's every party is doing a campaign for the young people, but what in elections matters in many cases it's the elderly, because they are a lot more of them, and they are voting in a better outcome than young people do. It's not fair, but it's the case, and especially elderly people tend to be more conservative and more aware against changes. So always the parties in Germany are well advised to not insist in rapid changes, in revolutions, but in smooth reform. Sometimes it's not enough. We see at times like this, but the people are very much aware of this. What you always as well have to have in mind is a fight heart against brain. You always, if you try this, brain will lose. If the emotions are not with your message, or if you're always trying to be rational, and if you always think a person is a homo economicus, this does not work. We saw a lot of campaigns where, for example, CDU had statistics about employment and saying, oh, people are fine, we have a very low employment rate. But if the other side brings in two people who are unemployed with their situation personally in their homes, the money is not enough, the children are suffering, and then your best statistics won't work if you do not have the emotions, if you do not have the pictures, if you do not are able to visualize what you are saying. This is as well very much the case. You have as well to have in mind when you compare international elections, there are structural issues like the electoral system, which is changing sometimes completely what we are talking about. In Germany, with our system, you know that you probably will not gain an absolute majority. So after the election, you will need partners. And if you know this, your campaign will be different. It's difficult to be completely negative, to make a negative campaign about the others if the day after the elections you have to form a government with them. Maybe something is working short time, but in the long run you lose trust, and people would say, oh, what kind of campaign is this? And if you destroy trust among the parties, among the personnel which is participating, it's difficult to come to targets. It's completely different if you have a system like in Britain or in the United States, first past the post. In this case, it's not necessary that you are the best and the brightest. It's only important that you are seen a little bit better than the others. There is this famous old joke about the two men in the jungle meeting a tiger, and one of the men from his backpack is taking the new Nike sports shoes, and the other is laughing at him, saying, "Oh, and you think with this you will run faster than the tiger?" And the other say, "No, I don't need run faster than the tiger. I only need to run faster than you." And this is a little bit in the election campaign as well. If you are a little bit better or a little bit, if the other is seen a little bit worse than you, maybe it's enough. And this is showing the campaign as well in this kind of systems which we are not trying. Mixed systems, and then this is maybe a side aspect in my experience in Latin America. What is problematic sometimes are the mixed systems between presidential elections and parliamentary systems, where you see sometimes people elect a president, and afterward this president has a majority in the parliament against, and then this kind of competence, of trouble, of fighting is like in Peru is the best case where they are changing presidents nearly each half a year, because the president is popular in some parts of the country, but the majority in other parts in the parliament and the parties is different. So each of the both sides try to win over the others. It's mistrust, and then it's completely dysfunctional. This is from my point of view something which is contributing to distrust and this kind of instability. What we now see, what is different, and this is in Germany the case, and in Europe in many places, is that we have a lot less core voters. And before, it was quite clear in times when I started being interested in politics. My first campaign as a young volunteer started in 1972 in the campaign, in this case, against Willy Brandt. It was not very successful from our side, but in this moment, it was quite clear if you are Catholic, living on the countryside, etc., etc., you vote Christian Democrats. If you are a worker, if you live in a big city, if you are a member of a labor union, you vote Social Democrats. Quite clear. And in the middle, there was always maybe a segment of 10%. The people about the campaign was to bring it over to your sides in the moment when we had three political parties, Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, and Liberals. Now we see a lot more fragmentation. And overall, for a party like the CDU, you can count with less than 10% of core voters, and it's even going down this number. So always you in the election campaigns and during the time you always need to win over new majorities. CDU, for example, we have the problem that we are losing from election to election on the national level 1 million voters because they are dying. It's our elderly voters. And so this to substitute this group, it's quite difficult. So you have to do a different campaign. In United States, it's an interesting debate about, it became clear in the 2016 campaign of Donald Trump. In the United States, many people for a long time said, okay, the structural situation in society is working against Republicans, because the old white men and women, Anglo-Saxon Protestants, they are going down in numbers. This is the core voters of the Republicans, and you have more migrant voters from Latin America. You have a growing importance of black voters in the United States. So this is working against Trump. He in this moment decided on the one hand to say, okay, but we have a voter turnout in the United States, if it's very high, 65, 70%. So if I get my base, this Anglo-Saxon white rural voters on the ground, maybe it's enough. Even in society, they are minority. Maybe in an election, it's enough to mobilize them to 100%. On the other hand, we learned a lot that, for example, migrants from Latin America in United States not automatically vote against Republicans because their migration politics. Like in Germany, in many situations in the United States, many people say, okay, I'm living here, but I'm not very much interested that so much people come in and make life more difficult for me. This is, I remember very well here in Berlin, the saying when in 2015, when they started this big move from migrants, from refugees from Syria and others, where Turkish people in Berlin said, oh, are you crazy to let in all these Arabs? So in this case, you know, this is not a homogeneous group. As well, very conservative voters from Cuba vote very differently than the Mexican in Chicago. So in this case, you have to target very well and see what is happening. We are, and this is today more visible, we are in constant campaigning. Nearly every day you see an opinion poll. In many cases, the opinion polls, some based on internet, for example, CY and others in Germany, are still not so trustworthy because representation of some of this opinion polls aren't very high. But for the people, this counts. You see, even this interviews in the streets, what people are thinking. We have a 24-hour news cycle, which was beforehand impossible. When I was young, we had these 3 television programs, and these 3 television programs, they finished at midnight with a national anthem, and this was it. Today, you start early in the morning as a politician looking what was in Deutschlandfunk, what is in the social media, to what do you have to react. It's permanent. This is a lot of stress, but it's important. Today, everybody is focused on United States and in the election campaigns in 2 weeks. And many people, you see, experts from Germany, Professor Korte, Andrea Römmele, everybody is in the United States to observe the elections. What I, from my personal point of view, what I learned is that the United States and United States elections is not the role model, but the great exception. There are so many differences in the United States which you cannot compare to our situation. It is a little bit like people in a supermarket looking in the campaign. You are passing by and looking what's in, and maybe you see some stuff. You think, okay, this maybe is useful for me, but a lot of things aren't useful at all. It starts with campaign finances. In Germany, to only mention one figure, in Germany, the big parties, Social Democrats and Christian Democrats, for a national campaign, they spend normally around 25 million euros. 25 million. Meanwhile, in the United States, the 2 campaigns of Trump and Harris spent 350 million only in television spots in the small state of Pennsylvania, which is responsible for 19 electorate people. So this gives you a dimension. In the United States, with less than 3 billion euros, you are not competitive at all. And if you see Mr. Musk, for example, he donated via this campaign PACs, political action committees, 27 million euros to the campaign of Donald Trump alone. So one person, and with this budget of of Elon Musk, you could easily finance the whole campaign, national campaign in Germany for all the parties together. So this is one focus. Still, television matters a lot. The big budget in the United States still is television ads. In Germany, you have this regulated system in the public service where the political parties have a special amount of spots for free. And you can buy ads in private television, but it's so expensive that many parties abstain and say, okay, for us, it's too expensive. It's nice to have one or another television spot, but we can afford it. Or we try to have one spot we use for social media, we use for television as well. And in Germany, for a long time, American campaigners never could believe what they saw when they saw television spots in German public television, where always before the spot start, there is the advertisement. And now you are seeing advertisements from a political party. The party is responsible for whatsoever. It's a little bit comparable with the pharmaceutical sector. If they do campaigns for medical care, where always the advice before using it, ask your doctor or ask in the drugstore what kind of effects maybe it has. So this is somewhat like a warning, and for American campaigners, it's a joke in this case, and it's quite different. In what is a big difference. And now it's an open question how this will work out when we have more influence of artificial intelligence or more kind of social media analysis. This is targeting. In the United States, the data laws allow a lot of things which in Germany and in many European countries are strictly forbidden. So you cannot match in Germany, for example, the data from a private credit card with your voter record, with the data where you live, which car you buy, where your children are going to school. In the United States, this is possible. So you have a perfect profile of each and every voter. So in this case, you can design very tailored messages to each and every person. And today you can do it via social media, via Telegram, via WhatsApp, in a form that nobody outside is looking at your message. Sometimes it was always the problem to say, okay, if I try to target a special group and make a message for them, all the others see it as well, and maybe saying, okay, how does it match with what you are saying to me? Now you can make this tailored news to everybody, and you do not disturb anybody else who said, but I'm absolutely against this, what you are sending to this person. And it was quite clear that in the last campaign, for example, Facebook and others did very well tailored analysis about how their users are informing themselves. And it was quite clear that, for example, the average Republican voter is using completely different media coverage than a Democratic voter is doing. This is two kind of mindsets if you use CNN or you use Fox News. And it was quite interesting that the polarization, meanwhile, in the United States get at this amount that people are unfriending people on Facebook if they see that they send messages which do not coincide with their personal perspective. If you ask, for example, and this is for a society terrible, if you have opinion polls in the United States, which shows that many people would be very much concerned if their daughter or their son would marry someone who is voting for the other party. If I imagine this in Germany, okay, meanwhile, some cases I wouldn't be happy if my daughter, but in another case. But in this case as well, in the United States, this comes to a very, very polarized situation. And you saw with the attacks on 6th of January in the last days of the first Trump government, to which this could lead. What is quite different as well, and which is nearly not acceptable from a European standpoint, is that all the election campaigns in the United States is concentrated in 6, 7, 8, 9 swing states, battleground states. Even in big states like California or in other places, you nearly do not see any election campaign because it's so clear that in this case one party would win and not the other. So it would be wasted the money if you invest in this states. So everything of this enormous amount of money in the United States campaign is going to a very few group of voters, and this is a problem as well from my viewpoint. And still, even with this big amounts, you see that in Germany, but as well in the United States, what still is working very well are the door-to-door campaigns, knocking doors, personal contact. If you are able to have as much personal contact as possible, this is seen more authentic. If there are friends, if you are people you know, recommend a party, recommend a candidate, you listen different than to a television spot or what you find on social media. So beside all the important events, the campaign congresses, the party conventions, door-to-door is still a message. So as well, we see that this targeting in Germany is as well in the rise. If we look our social media, if we look what's happening, for example, on TikTok, it's astonishing. And it's astonishing how fast things are changing. In the election campaigns in 2021, young voters voted 25% liberals and 25% Greens. This was the two big winners in the national campaign 2021. Today, you look, this astonishing rise of AfD and populist voters among young people. And if you compare how many people follow and are looking on TikTok, for example, AfD, or the traditional parties as well, it's interesting. People like in the AfD got a lot better than people in CDU or in SPD how to tackle with this voter group, for example, with especially with young people. It's a big debate, and we in Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, it was a question: do we need a TikTok channel? And many people said, especially the elderly, strategically, it's a Chinese state-controlled medium. You do not know the algorithms. You know little about data protection and others. Maybe better we stay out. And the others said, okay, from a communicative viewpoint, if you want to rise access among young people of 16-year-old, which today are able to vote, you need to be on these platforms, because if not, you simply do not exist. So finally, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is on TikTok as well. But it's a channel, it's a possibility, and it would be unwise for a political party not to use all the channels they have at their access. Difficult to see exactly afterwards, and with this I'm finishing the panorama I tried to give. For me, it's difficult to isolate the effects of political campaigns, of election campaigns, to say we won because this worked or that worked, and it's even more difficult to know it during the campaign. Afterwards, everybody and every expert explains to you why it was impossible that there would be existed a different outcome. But before, one is asking, and what is the perception made by? In Germany, it is interesting. If you have the last opinion polls in ZDF, 72% of the Germans are completely convinced that Kamala Harris will win the election in the United States. 72%. And everybody who's looking at what's happening in the United States, the swing state situation, the overall panorama, everybody would say, okay, it's a 50-50 case. It's too close to call. It's about maybe 50,000 votes in Pennsylvania, which makes a different outcome. So one is asking, how is it possible that 72% of the Germans think this is completely clear? I had an experience quite similar a long time ago. It was the 2004 campaign, Bush Jr. against John Kerry. It was the same. Everybody said, "Oh, this Bush, this cowboy in Germany." Everybody was convinced that it was an easy going for John Kerry, or Hillary Clinton against Trump in the first case of the election when Trump won. Everybody had it clear, and the campaign started saying, "Okay, Donald Trump, it's a joke. He's entertaining it, but he never will win." Primaries. Then he won the first primaries. Then people said, oh, even the experts. I'm speaking of the experts and the journalists. Then they said, okay, he won some small state, but when it becomes serious, party establishment and the Republicans never would be thinking that he could win. They will do something. Then he won the nomination. In this moment, everybody said, okay, in this case, it's very clear, it's very easy for Hillary, that the Republicans had been so stupid to elect Donald Trump. Hillary isn't very popular, but against Trump, how would vote for this maniatic? We know what happened. And then in the election campaign with the president today, more or less, we in Germany have the same perception. For 4 years, experts said, oh, it's not impossible that Trump comes back. Maybe we need to prepare. And now it's 2 weeks to go until the elections. And we say, okay, we didn't prepare, but we have still 2 weeks. Let's see what Europe will do out of this. Frank Staus, one of the best and experienced campaigners for the Social Democrats, had the sentence to say, and if things go better than expected or planned, obviously it was our strategy. With a little doses of irony, but I think he's quite right with this. Afterwards, it's clear why things went out like they went out. But in the moment you plan a campaign, there are a lot of uncertainties. It was a little bit longer, but I tried to add a panorama a little bit, including también as well the issues of society and a little bit of campaigning. And I would be glad if you feel this was useful and that we have the possibility to discuss and maybe with your comments or your experience to complete the picture. Thanks a lot.